This video is a snippet from a research review between Coach Dalton and I, where we are discussing the ISSM position stand on creatine. So we're discussing the benefits, who should be taking it, when you should be taking it, and why. Hi guys, and welcome to the next research review video. So we put this poll on the Facebook group about what you wanted to see next, and you voted for the ISSN nutrition stand on creatine. So that is what we're going to discuss. And we're going to start by discussing what actually creatine is.
Cool topic, creatine, something we all love, a lot of people use, and in fact, if it's pretty much the first thing that I hear anyone ask me about ever that are slowly being introduced into the world of health and fitness. It's kind of like that first low entry one that you're taking some creatine, bro. What are you doing? Like, you got the creatine sorted in your stack. So it's really cool that we're doing this. Now, creatine is a really cool molecule. It's found in our body, and we get it naturally through our diet. It's really found prevalently in seafood and meats. So over the course of about a day, you'll find up to 1, maybe 2 grams, depending on how much meat you eat throughout the day, that you get coming in from those external sources. But obviously, we can make it ourselves within our body as well. And it's a really important process as a part of our energy bioenergetics. Do you want to have a little description about that, Shannon?
Yeah, so I'll talk to you about how creatine works. So essentially, our body uses ATP for energy. That's adenosine triphosphate. Probably already know that. And when we are using ATP, it's broken down into ADP, which is adenosine diphosphate. So it loses a phosphate group. So this is where creatine comes in, because creatine and phosphate can easily bind together to create phosphocreatine. So when we're using energy and we're losing phosphate from ATP, turning it into ADP, creatine is there to donate a phosphate group, which is basically the rapid restoration of energy. So when we are exercising or things like that, and our creatine stores are being, our ATP stores are being diminished, we're breaking it down. Creatine is very useful in the sense that it replenishes that. So when it comes to storage in the muscle, on average, these are, to quote the figures given in the paper, 120 millimole per kilogram of dry muscle mass for a 70 kilo individual, whereas our creatine stores are actually much higher than that. So essentially, to quantify it, we're probably only making use of about 3/4 of our stores, which is where supplementing can come in. Because when it comes to high intensity exercise, not only does it use a lot of ATP, but it requires rapid access to that ATP. So if it's not there, then performance and intensity will drop. So taking creatine will help with that. And I think Dalton's going to go more into how that works.
Yeah, cool. Awesome. So I think I wanted to touch on as well is you raised a great example of when we do through exercise, how it's depleted. But every action in the body, every cellular response in the body is fueled by this source of currency that we call ATP. So not only is creatine awesome for when we actually deplete ATP rapidly through high intensity exercise, but ATP slowly gets depleted across the course of the day as we're doing things, even just thinking. There's a depletion going on in our brain. So having some creatine stores, at least a balance, if not a net positive, which we'd like to see, of creatine being synthesized each day, we're going to see our ATP stores be replenished fairly quickly. But having higher resting creatine levels also allows us to recover from those things fairly quickly as well. Now, if you take it as a supplement, most people, the fun part is you always hear people talking about you have to load creatine. Creatine is something that you have to run in with like 4 weeks of crazy high dosages so that you can reach max saturation, bro. And I find it so funny that whilst that's true, most people don't think about the context of why we need to load creatine or what you can go about doing. So yes, you can load creatine. One way to do it is to do 3 to 4 times of the standard dose that you would use over the day for up to 4 weeks. So that would reach saturation quite quickly. That would look as an example of like 15 grams per day. The only reason though that you would use a loading phase like that is if you need to have max saturation as fast as possible. If you are going to compete in a high intensity, high output competition in the next 4 weeks. Most people don't introduce creatine 4 weeks before a competition as something they've thought about or aren't messing around with things right before a competition, because that's generally when you've dialed things in. Introducing something as drastic like that could be quite detrimental. Some of the loading side effects are like gastric expulsion, gastric distress, and like diarrhea and stuff like that. So upsetting your stomach is probably not the greatest idea 4 weeks out. But I digress. So you can load it, it's fine to do, but long are the days gone that you need to load them. Now, creatine can be used in about 3 to 5 grams per day, and done continually over a long period of time, you're going to be in a net positive balance with your creatine stores. So you will reach saturation. It just won't be as rapidly as at loading phase that could be done over 10 days to 4 weeks, sorry. So yes, you can load it. Yes, you will reach saturation faster, but it's not necessary. And taking it in a small dose, like 3 to 5 grams every day, will lead you to have the high saturation results. Now, you can start to use this in and around your training, but most people think that taking creatine is something that the body then utilizes right then and there. But the storage process is actually a little bit different. It takes time to not only get the creatine from our mouth into our stomach and then broken down into amino acids so that it can be used. It takes time to be stored as well. So none of the creatine that you're immediately taking is being utilized that quickly. In fact, it's easier to think about it like this. The creatine that you take today is more readily available for you to use tomorrow. So instead of it being something that you worry about how quickly you take it and the timing of it today, for it to impact today's sessions, the timing to increase your performance is not going to matter. So in saying that, you can introduce creatine, a morning meal, a lunch meal, an evening meal, post-workout, pre-workout, under the sun, sometimes midnight, depends whatever you want it to be. But as long as you maintain that consistency of taking it every day, you get the benefit.
Yeah, I think that's a really good point. Why make things more complicated than they need to be by trying to load if you don't need to be maximally benefiting for it? And as you say, if you're taking it that close to a competition, then you've probably not taking the best approach, because as you say, you shouldn't be interfering with things that close, especially when creatine can cause like water retention, and in a lot of sports they are weight's important. So it's a very good point. How do you take your creatine, Dalton?
It doesn't taste great, so mixing it with something makes it super easy to have. A really easy, lazy recommendation that I give people is just to have it with a protein shake. So that way they never know that it's even in there. They just shake it up and drink it, or have it with a meal. And I just simply have it with a meal. I have it with lunch.
That's exactly what I've been doing, because I'm traveling at the moment. I just have it with my protein shake in the morning, just to ensure I'm getting some protein in, done the creatine for the day, and then that's it.
Yep, simple. And that makes it work really well. So some of the ergogenic aids, guys, and for those that aren't familiar, ergogenic aids is simply something that enhances your performance. The ISSN stand really does give some really good examples of what use and where it does benefit. So it's in having a higher sprint or the anaerobic output that we're going to have. So single or repeated sprint performances, those ones. Stuff that you're doing with maximum effort muscle contractions. So think singles, maybe doubles, if potentially triples. It's not really going to be happening, but max single effort, like that highest output that you could have. It does state some increased muscle mass, sure, and strength adaptations, definitely. The muscle mass stuff, I think, is something we can get into later on, but it's not strictly increased muscle mass. It's lean body mass, and that's something I want to talk about. But you get enhanced glycogen synthesis, which is really cool, getting better carbohydrate intake and synthesis happening and creatine helping that work out a little bit better is really beneficial, because everyone who competes with power, who competes in any type of strength sport that's not long distance endurance events, is going to have the need for glycogen. So that's always a plus. The anaerobic threshold can be increased, which is really cool, because that is stuff that we see being used not only in the endurance sports for overtaking, sprinting, breaking away from the pack on any of the long distance endurance events where they might need to use that, but having a high anaerobic threshold for everyone else is obviously going to allow you to have a greater work output. There's also enhanced aerobic capacity, so that shuttling of the ATP in the mitochondria. So like I was talking about, the sprints, the breaking away from the endurance the long distance endurance events. Increased work capacity, I think I mentioned that, and recovery as well. So all of those, if any of those sounded like something that you could benefit from, it's like, it just becomes a no-brainer as to why you would throw creatine into the mix.
Yeah, now, exactly. Tolerate higher volumes of training, promotes recovery and reduces the risk of injury. Pretty much some of the main benefits there.
Yeah, definitely, that's it. And not only are they the main benefits, but they're the ones that obviously we want to take use of the most. They're the ones that we want to stack in our little personal bag of goodies, the things that set us up for success every day the most. And those three things right there will do that. And creatine ticks all those boxes for so many different sports as well.
So as Dalton mentioned before, we are constantly using ATP, not just when we're exercising. And our brain is actually one of the most metabolically active tissues that we have. So with that, there is a massive burden for energy production. Unfortunately, thinking doesn't actually burn that many calories. Wouldn't it be nice if it did? I wish. How did you lose all that weight? Oh, just overthinking about life. But with these cognitive tasks, what they do is they elevate brain activity and thereby they increase ATP demand. So the role of creatine then in facilitating ATP resynthesis is elevated when these cognitive tasks become complex or we're challenged by stressors such as sleep deprivation or fatigue, which I guess probably a fair few of us do experience from time to time. So studies have shown that creatine supplementation can increase brain creatine levels, as we said, and this can help to reduce mental fatigue and improve cognitive function. I think a lot of these benefits have been shown for those who experience slight deficiencies in creatine stores, such as the elderly, and as we say, in situations such as sleep deprivation. So I feel like everyone's well aware of the ergogenic benefits by now, and I think people are going to begin to catch on to more of the cognitive benefits, and I don't want to overhype them yet because I think a bit of more research needs to be done. But having said that, studies have shown that there's been improvements in working memory and intelligence tests, things that require you to think quite quickly. And yeah, after sleep deprivation as well, creatine comes in handy there. So again, if you're taking it anyway for sports performance, just know that there are likely to be some cognitive benefits too.
So as I mentioned at the start, that was just a short snippet from the full discussion between Dalton and I, and you can find the full video by signing up to the Flex Success Research Review. All links will be left in the description box below, where you can also find out all the other cool things that we've got going on too. Be sure to like and subscribe, and I'll see you in the next one.